going to be going into tears and how the enemy creates tears, and as far as enemy warfare tactics. Okay, so we've all heard the parable of the wheats and the tares. So it is a little confusing as to what exactly is considered tares. So we know from the parable that tares are a creation of the enemy. So creation of the enemy. Creation of the enemy for what? So in this video, I'm going to make this a two-part. This first part, I'm going to be going into the different types of splitting, mind splitting, soul theft, and the very many different types of tears. But this is going to be more of a 101. So kind of starting from scratch, because the creation of tears is a very complex topic, right? And it's confusing, and it really needs explanation in order to help people to understand how does the enemy create human beings and what is considered a tear. Is it just somebody who is just operating in sin in that fallen state, or is it much, much more than that? So in this video, I'm going to be going into the primary way that the enemy creates tears. And then I'll also go into a little bit more of advanced tears that are really more sophisticated tears for sophisticated warfare and enemy warfare. So very calculated, very planned out creation of tears, because all tears are not done by accident. All tears are a systematically engineered human being that has been compromised to make that person into an agent of the enemy. So this person has been compromised and is now like in spy warfare. They've been converted to that enemy team through many different tactics. Okay, so kind of just a 101. I'm going to go back to processes that the enemy goes through and has to go through in order to enter people and create tears. So we've all heard of this fallen state where God says, don't eat the tree. You can have the tree. Here's the tree. But I'm saying don't eat from it. I've given you free will to be able to eat all of these trees. You've been given however many hundreds, or if not, who knows, thousands of trees to choose from, but don't eat this tree. But I'm putting it out here to where you can eat it, because we in the universe are given free will. We are all free to be able to make any choices that we want. So if we choose to go into these states of sin, then it's by our own, it's damnation on our part. It's a fallen state on our part. It's a sin state on our part, right? So this initial state of good and evil, being that original fallen state in the tree that we were advised not to eat from, is that original fallen state. And for purposes of this video and explanations into levels of how the enemy gets in and takes over a vessel to create a tear, that first fallen state is an interesting concept because this good and evil state, where it is the primary first state, meaning if somebody's just in this good and evil state, they're just in this good and evil state or split state. So you can think of good and evil is a fallen state, but it's fallen from God, who is whole. God is whole. God is one, is whole, and is holy, right? So when we're connected to God, as in the garden, and then we did the deed and ate that tree on our human bloodline that we are subject to, that we fell into this fallen state of not one, not wholeness, not holiness, but into two. So good and evil is a split state. It's two. It's a state of duality. It is a split off from God's state, a separation, and it is a fallen state, and it is also a split state of what? A split state of the soul, of the mind. We are physical creations made of dust. So our souls are able to be split and our minds are able to be split. So anybody's very familiar with the term multiple personality or split personality disorder is a good reference to somebody whose mind or soul or brain has been suffered so much unhealthy, fallen separation from God and gone through so much trauma that is unnatural that their brains split. They disassociate. They fall into it. So it's a fracturing of the mind when our minds should stay whole and holy as it was intended to stay that way into even more connected states and just an engineered state that is engineered by God. So this good and evil state is a split state of the mind into two, into duality. So somebody living in this state of just sin, we would consider that a number one. So I'm going to put a 1 here because it is a first way in multiple ways that the enemy creates tears. Okay, so somebody in this state, which all humanity in some way, shape, or form can be operating in, what is this state? This state is sin, right? So if you're in this one level, meaning you are operating in a fallen state, you're operating in sin, okay? And if you're operating in this level 1 fallen state, that can get you split and open, not under God's protection, because you're not connected to God. So when you're not connected, you don't have that hedge of protection around you. You don't have the covering around you. And beings are able to get in through what? Through legality, through legal rights, because you're operating in a split off sinful state, and the sin that you're participating in is an open door, an invitation to these beings to be able to come in. So even though this state is a 1, is a first level. You can call it level 1 oppression. So somebody may be operating in just some, sinful state, could just be oppressed. And then if it keeps going into further states of sin, into much deeper levels of just this even level 1, they could turn that into a full possession, a full demonic possession. So, but that is just this initial fallen state of good and evil, which is it, even though it's a level 1, it is a very bad state to be in. And I'm going to explain in this video why this is even though it's level 1, it's a damned state to be in, because being not connected to God, in which we know that Jesus corrected this state, this situation of being deceived by the serpent and the serpent deceiving us, as well as that being our free choice, and falling into this state to where this deception and us not knowing the full context, not having all of the information as what demonic spirits in the celestial, in the demonic realms, in the heavens, in the dimensional heavens, have access to the context, the terms of what's going on. These demonic spirits are without redemption. They are cut off. They've been judged because they are aware and they fully knew the repercussions and still made these choices, so can't be trusted to further go on to affect life anymore, to be safe around other life anymore. So they are past the point. The deeds that they've done are so fallen, so unforgivable, in such a state of damnation and judgment that they have been judged. But the state of God, who is only a giver of life and does not kill or destroy spirits, does not kill and destroy these beings, but we know that does punish and throw spirits into a pit, but does not destroy. Goes against the nature of God to destroy us spirits. So spirits are not destroyed. So this kingdom of darkness is in a perpetual state of siphoning life force. God is the giver of all life. And so these beings, by not being connected to the Creator anymore, have no ability to create their own life and have to siphon life force from other beings, as well as steal soul parts. So in this fall of good and evil, and our soul being open and split, these kingdom of darkness is in full operation of needing to extract for food to sustain themselves, siphoning life force, siphoning the life force of God to sustain themselves, as well as the soul parts of these people is a form of theft. This is a form of stealing these soul parts, splitting and stealing the soul parts of people. So in terms of splitting and falling into this split state of good and evil, then that's why this, even though this be a level 1, is a poor to say the least state to be in. So this state is level 1, and at level 2, fallen state from this, we have the 2. So in this split, okay, you've got the making of a tear. So how does the enemy make a tear? So we're going to start at kind of ground level. How does the enemy start turning human beings into agents of the enemy? Because most human beings don't sign up really. I mean, some do who have been deceived because they want like these perks, right? They're kind of deceived and sign their soul away to get riches and all of these things, temporarily. But in this case, most times and through bloodlines. And in most cases, this secondary splitting of the mind, which is a mirror of this good and evil split state of mind, is a trauma split. Okay, so the enemy is constantly trying to split the mind to cause enough trauma, to cause enough pain, and to cause enough disassociation and splitting of the mind to where that person checks out and splits off. And in this case, this vertical split. So it really is deemed a primary split to where if this can be in place, a complete slice of the mind. So a complete fracturing of the mind so early on, age 1 to 3. Then this person will become enmeshed with the spirit who comes in and initially fractures this person and steals this person. It's a form of soul theft. Although this person's parts, check out, it's too much for them. It's also a form of soul theft because this is an attack on this person so early on. And this is done in bloodlines typically because it's very hard for these spirits to come in and do like a one-off. So in this case, this person who's very young, 1 to 3 years old, will stay in a state of arrested development. So parts of this person's soul is very much is still intact, and then other parts are not there. And that spirit comes in and enmeshes with this person. So this person stays in a state of arrested development and stays very immature. But the rest of the person, as they grow older, their logic grows, their intellect grows. So they would look like they are. So they're going to look like they're somebody who is not demonically possessed or oppressed even, because that spirit has come in so early and done this slice to them and written those initial codes of that person. The spirit has been able to come in very early, enmesh with the person's soul parts and possess them very early on and write that initial code of the person and the belief systems, the biases, anything that they think that's all written by the Spirit, and that Spirit enmeshes with the person. So this person, the parts that remain of the person, this person stays 1 to 3, and they do grow up intellectually, but the parts that make them human, which is God and love, aren't there. They have checked out. It's also a form of soul theft. Okay. So that part isn't there. It needs to be retrieved back again. So in this situation, this spirit stays in, lays very low. It's really an enmeshment. People that get to know this person will eventually see that that person is possessed. You will see later in life that around 50, 60, 70 years old, that once they, maybe they will lose a spouse, or they, burn all their bridges. They can, any number of things, the circles that they're running in, they've siphoned all the life force out of all those people. They've lied to all those people. People have noticed how fake that they are. Their mask has slipped. That they're operating solely in this good and evil state, right? This fallen state. People have seen that there's no parts of them that seem human, and they've seen that glimpses of the spirit that's there. And what you will really see is when that person is later in life, so they're 50, 60, 70 years old, is when you'll really start to see the spirit come in. And they burned all their bridges, and even their spouse may not, that they've kind of conned into being around them, if that spouse isn't somebody who really doesn't like, somebody who's very lukewarm, who loves living in this sin state. Because a lot of people really enjoy living in this, enjoy their sin, and may really use that person as a way to bring things that are very sinful into their life, right? So, but if that's not the case and they lose their spouse, then they will have the spirit that's in them will have a life force siphoning crisis, and will start to panic and go in and to pay for people to siphon the food that they need, the life force that they need from others. So this is what you'll see happen. And so if there's a total collapse in this person's ability, and everybody that's around this person is onto them and that spirit, who's very much of a demonic spirit, and everybody's around them is not wanting to have their life force extracted, then this is when you will see this person with this vertical split fall into things like homelessness and just severe depression, because this person is, again, in a state of arrested development, and they are completely immature. Their emotional regulation and self-soothing is practically none. And this is when they don't have an ability, their looks have faded, they don't have an ability to go seduce and bring in forms of life force, food for this spirit. And that is when the spirit will turn on the host and try and extract from their host. And this person will just fall into homelessness, and that spirit will eventually, if they're not providing anything, kind of just check out of this person, and the person will end up homeless and worse. So this is the beginning, kind of state of forming a tear. That really is kind of like what you will see at the worst case, but most times in forming a tear, these people don't really fall into like homelessness, or they would be more successful in. So if the genetic material is good, right? So the people that you would see falling into homelessness are people who are, the genetic material's not great, just poor genetic makeup in that. So those are the people you will see this demonic spirit kick off to the curb, okay? But if the genetic material is good and they come from a bloodline that is hierarchical, okay, then that situation, you will really see that demonic spirit just running amok and just going through people, siphoning energy off people and going from one person to another and destroying people's lives, one after the other, like tissue paper. So, and they will be able to cover their tracks so much better that, and that's the situation where their body count, you will see will be very high. And in forming tears, if the enemy can get this vertical split into place, then they'll try and get this vertical split into place. They don't need much more, because the vertical split is a perfect mirror to this good and evil state. And so if you know anybody who is been compromised with that split, then they will see everything in terms of white and black. They'll see their friend or their enemy. It is a perfect mirror to a fallen state. They're so disconnected to the Creator. Their mind has been so split that there's no connection to God. That spirit has been able to come in and just get them in this fallen state that is a reflection. It is this perfect split off state to, it is a fallen state of good and evil. So this vertical slice is the perfect making of a tear. And if they can get that slice in, then they will try to get that slice in, and you'll see it in bloodlines. Hierarchical bloodlines, or any bloodline that has any kind of spirits operating in that line, in that cyclical line. And you will also see, if this vertical split is in place, very bad news if there's other splitting. So what you'll see is, and I'll go in this in another video, so if you have the vertical split or slice or fallen state from this good and evil fallen state, and then you have more splitting, this is when we go into advanced tear no pun intended. This is when we go into just the advanced territory. Okay. So advanced territory, which is not anything funny. Okay. That is when we go into this is when we go into a situation that is end times, and why the enemy is turning people. Because you have to ask yourself, why is the enemy creating all of these tears? So the enemy is creating these tears. Well, one of the reasons is for Armageddon, is why the enemy is creating these tears. So, because some of these tears are, and I'll go into this in another video, but the really more advanced tears are really spy warfare. Enemy spy warfare that is equipped to be very cloaked, very hidden in society, right? For structured in such a way, in a way that is for war, right? So these are tears built for war. So the enemy is not playing around with creating tears. If anybody thinks that they are, then hasn't read their Bible, right? So that's going to be the video on the good and evil fallen state and the vertical slice of the mind. And if you know anybody with that vertical slice, really what that is kind of deemed as, this vertical slice, is the narcissistic personality disorder. So this narcissistic personality disorder is what they call it. So it's really not, it's the DSM-5 or psychology, they say narcissistic personality disorder, which it is not that, but people can have traits, right, that are narcissistic traits, which this is true. People definitely do have traits that are narcissistic personality disorder, and that's true. And there's a spectrum, of course, that is that, right? But this vertical split is really actually a slicing of the brain, a slicing of the mind or of the soul, where just the enemy comes in and compromises this person so much so that they're able to lay low and just operate this person at full capacity and just go in and just run amok and siphon the energy, siphon the life force of people. To the extent that just damaging other people's lives and the life of the being that they have come in and really jocked this person's soul parts, really stolen this person's soul parts. So really just awful in terms of spiritual warfare. So tune in for the next video where I go over horizontal splitting, homemade horizontal splitting, and not homemade horizontal splitting. I'll go over spy plants and engineered splitting in the next video. So stay tuned for the next video, and I hope you got all you could out of this video. Thanks, and stay tuned.